Once you've got your panels glued and sandwiched together here, you need to shape the tip, because you're still not done here. You only have 3/8 of an inch of padding over your core, and you need at least an inch for any strike wheel surface. Some people like to be a little more liberal than that, but the more safe you make a flat blade, the faster it's going to break apart. If, let's say, you have 2 inches of strike legal instead of 1 inch, that's going to increase the amount of flex at the end when you hit with the end of your weapon or a thrust. Most people strike, I don't know about most people, but a lot of players like to maximize the range, and they strike mostly up here. And so you can wear out your tip really quickly if you have extra padding. I recommend going with the minimum 1 inch, just over an inch, to make sure. Yeah. Here you'll see that 3/8 inch piece that I put here in the middle over the core. You can notice the cross grain effect happening. See, this one's got the open facing here, and this is the top of the sheet. That's important. It's really, really important to utilize techniques like that. If you think that's no big deal, just do it anyway. We'll be doing it again with the next couple pieces. So, you shape the tip of your sword. I don't like my swords to be square. I like them to be more of a rounded popsicle type thing. So you take your snappable 28-cent Walmart razor knife, and you just shear off the edges however you like it. If you like it square, great, just fast forward a bit. If you don't, decide how you like it, cut it off on both sides. Try not to cut too much. You have to remember that the core is right there, and you need an inch of padding on all sides of the core for it to be strike legal. So if you cut too far through, you'll have to pad your sword more, and that could be weird, and you could have like this penis effect going on at the end, or mushroom tipping. Don't do that. Okay, so I've gone ahead and shaped the end of my sword. You can see there where I just cut the corners off. I skipped ahead a bit because I wanted to show you how this part works exactly. I cut out a 10/8, or 1 1/4 inch strip of foam to lay over the cap here. The camp pad is about 3/8 of an inch. It's not 1.5 inches. So if you make an 1.5 inch piece of foam, you're going to notice that you've got a lot hanging off the edges. I went with 10/8 because that's what it measured out to after I put it together. If you compress your foam, or if you bought a different brand of foam, you may have a different width. So just measure the end of your stick, cut it out that width, and glue it on. After you glue it on, and it gets reasonably well set, you're going to want to shave the sides down so that they're about the same width as the rest of your sword. Try to leave a little bit, it's just there, it makes it stronger. If you don't, no big deal. Definitely don't take off any of these panels. That's pretty important. Otherwise, you're going to have to do some corrective work, and that sucks. Because I sheared a little bit too much off the top of my sword, this won't put it at the expected 3/4 padding. So I've got another piece here that I'm going to have to layer over on top and shape it again. If you like your swords to be super safe, go ahead and put on the second piece anyway. Yeah, so once you've got your end pieces placed on, and you've shaved off any sort of mushroom tipping that was happening, of course making sure to, apply pressure every now and then, just make sure it's all stuck together. If you ever see any part where it's raising up, or there's like, some white webbing happening, that's not fully seated, and you need to fix that. If you can't get it to sit, either take it off, recut, and re-glue, or put a piece of tape on and leave it for a while compressed and in place. Worst case scenario, you just didn't cover that spot with glue, and then you're gonna have to re-glue or take like a toothpick and put some glue in there. Yeah. Okay, so at this point, you're gonna want to bevel the blade of your sword. You don't know what that is, beveling. You just shear off at an angle all along the edges. Because in addition to weight, what's important in an ultralight sword is minimizing air resistance. In fact, I would say that air resistance is a bigger factor than weight once you know how to construct a decent Amtgard boffer. You really need to slim down that profile. You can make this as thin as you want. Brennan can be quoted on eSamurai forums stating that a sword is technically legal as long as some part of the striking edge, throughout its length, is an inch from the core. So that means you can technically have it down to like 1 fucking micron. That's an inch from the cord. I wouldn't go that thin. The thinner you make it, the shorter your sword's lifespan is going to be. I usually take it down to a little bit more than this center panel. You'll be having another piece to glue on after this to buff it up to the 2.5 inch requirement. Here I've got 3/4 inch strips that I'm going to use as my actual striking surface. If you want to be lazy, if you don't want to bevel, if you just want your sword to be more durable and unquestionably legal, just make a strip as wide as your blade is now and glue it on. And then you're done with the blade portion, which is the complicated part, I guess. I like to be fancy, and I like my swords to be really fast. So I'm going to bevel the edges down to this 3/4 inch width, and then I'm going to glue this strip all the way across the striking surface, both sides. Okay, once you've beveled your sword, if you look closely, you'll notice my bevel looks like dog shit, or you don't actually have to look closely at all. It just looks like dog shit. Doesn't matter that much. I mean, the nicer your bevel, the nicer your end product's going to be. Just try not to make any deep mistakes. It's better to cut off too little than too much. Here at the end, I've used duct tape to help hold this in place while the glue dries. You can leave that duct tape on, which is probably what I'm going to do, but it will increase the tip heaviness of your sword. The duct tape is probably the heaviest material of all that you're using in this construction so far. So if you do use duct tape, if you are leaving it on, try to minimize it. Don't compress the foam too much, like lightly compress it so that it stays in place, but definitely don't torque it down. And try not to double it up. Like here I've doubled it up. That spot, if it were exposed in the final product, would sting like a motherfucker. It's not going to be exposed. But if it were, it'd be awful. So once you've done that, you need your striking strips here, which I hope you've already cut out. I've mentioned them 2 or 3 times so far. Just make them the width of your beveled blade. So like this part right here, make them that wide, which is about where mine are at. Once you've got them, you just glue them on like the rest of the pieces. Unless you cut them from the long end of your camp pad, they're gonna be too short for one piece to go all the way around. And although your glue joints are actually technically stronger than any part of the foam that isn't bonded with glue, you still want to place it away from your sweet spot. So like, make your glue joints like down here, even that's actually pretty close to the sweet spot. Anywhere where you're not going to be hitting people with it repeatedly. If you glued your sword properly, those parts will actually be stronger, but if you glue it glued improperly, it'll be weaker and it'll fall apart faster. Okay, once you've got your striking strip glued on, you really need to make some decisions. And once you put a cover and a pommel on this thing, it's a perfectly legal, usable short sword. And an alright one at that. It's nice and light, it'll last you a while, might not be as durable as, you know, the true popsicle design. If you skip the beveling and just made a popsicle, it'll last longer. But this beveled design here cuts through the air really, really well. There's, you know, you can definitely notice the difference in air resistance. And even though it's not weighted and balanced like this popsicle sword here, it cuts through the air much more smoothly. It's far faster in its shots already. What I'm going to do to this sword is make it look like that one, which means putting a skin of a microcell foam around it everywhere. This will increase the durability of the sword, and although the foam that you're putting on it won't weigh very much, adhesive is quite heavy. So if you want your sword to last longer, do this. If you want it to be faster, tournament quality, what the fuck ever, just leave it as it is and use it for one tournament and consider rebuilding it. But since I like my swords to last more than a month or two, I'm going to skin it. So what you do is you measure out the distance from here to here. That's how wide you want the sword foam to be. And that's including all of the surfaces. It's going to be flush against every surface here. So don't take a flat measurement. You need to know what all of these dimensions are. So for me, this is 3/4, this is 3/8, and then this is... It varies throughout because I didn't use a bandsaw or a sharp knife. So I'm going to assume that this is 1/2 inch. If you're off a little bit, it doesn't really matter. You're just going to be gluing a strip along your striking surface and then another strip down your padded surfaces. So you're going to have a little bit of overlap, and you can cut to shape on the final pieces if you need to. But that's what we're doing. Once you've got your strips of foam cut out and covered with glue and all of that, you're going to want to start here at the tip. You can start farther down if you want, but I like to start here. Make sure that you're sticking it on as close to center as you can on one side, and just trace it up on the other side. Make sure it's as close to center as possible, and then just press it all down. Up on the tip, you're going to need to make relief cuts to make everything sit down flush without any folds or bubbles. I like to make 2 of them on either side, around where I initially cut the corners off, so right there and there. Remove as much material as you need possible to make it sit flush. You're going to be cutting out a consonant V, basically, reference strong bad there. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second.